a button. Yeah, you have to just hit OK. I got it.
Um, all right. Is it working
Perfect.
now?
Yes, it's good. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. My presentation today is very straightforward, and I hope it's very clear. I'm just going to be providing a very general introduction to phenomenology, so that you can understand a bit about what it is. I am very excited for your questions and comments. Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to hearing what you think. I'm going to begin with my presentation. Okay, and you can still see me in the corner, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. Okay. So yeah, the hidden power of phenomenology. As mentioned, I'm Thomas Byrne. I received my PhD at the Husserl Archives in Belgium at KU Leuven. And yes, I recently founded a new initiative called the Laboratory for Phenomenological Research, which is an attempt to apply phenomenology in qualitative research. But today, I'm just giving a general introduction. So, this is a picture of Edmund Husserl, the founder of phenomenology. In most pictures, he looks very angry. But the question is, what is phenomenology? Just to begin on a very simple level. And there is no one answer. Phenomenology is very different for different philosophers. So the kind of phenomenology that Husserl discovered is very different from the kind of phenomenology that his student practices. So one of his most famous students is Martin Heidegger, and Heidegger's phenomenology is extremely different. In the same way, many of Heidegger's students have very different methods and ideas for what phenomenology can be, such that it is always an ongoing process of trying to define and understand what phenomenology is. Um, so to make things straightforward, in this presentation, I'm just discussing Husserl's phenomenology. Because by doing that, we can provide some more concrete answers. Even for Husserl, the nature of phenomenology evolved over time, but I'm presenting kind of a standard account of what he thought was the case. So the question is, why should you care about this? Like, what's the more above and beyond like just being a general philosophy talk that you might be interested in? Like, what's the point? Or why, yeah, why should you care? And it's because Husserl's phenomenology has served as an inspiration for and continues to serve as an inspiration for so many fields. So feminism has been really impacted by phenomenology. So, for example, Judith Butler has at times called herself a phenomenologist. Simone de Beauvoir was a phenomenologist, and many other prominent feminists employ phenomenology as a method. So, without understanding phenomenology, you can miss important insights in feminism. Um, Art as well. Husserl's insights have really impacted art, maybe not directly, but through his students, to the point where if you go to any contemporary art museum today, um, most pieces will have some impact of phenomenology on them. And then a lot of contemporary research has also been impacted by phenomenology. So today, neuroscience, qualitative research, and many other emerging and advancing fields are extensively engaging with phenomenology. So, for example, neuroscience in particular really has been impacted by phenomenology recently. And for the past 30 years, qualitative research or maybe even more, past 50 years, qualitative research has strongly been impacted by phenomenology. So the idea is that to understand a great many fields, it is very helpful to have some background in the basic tenets of phenomenology. Uh, and also, it can help you understand, or when you go to an art museum, to see the pieces in different ways. So today, I just want to talk about four core tenets of phenomenology to try to make it as simple and straightforward. So first, I'm going to talk about the concept of intentionality, which is not what this word normally means in English. So whatever understanding of intentionality or intention you might have, try to get rid of that. Then also that phenomenology is executed from a first person perspective. That phenomenology is concerned with structures, and I'll explain that more when I get there. And finally, that phenomenology is a communal project together. Okay, so first, uh, intentionality. So, one of the key problems of philosophy is the bridge problem. How does consciousness uh, get out of the skull and out into the world? Um, how in the history of philosophy, many thinkers have tried to figure out how we are able to move from the inside of our consciousness to the outside world. As you know, if you've taken a history of philosophy class, this is a very important question for many philosophers trying to understand the way that we experience the world. Husserl's phenomenology takes a very different approach. So it dissolves this kind of border. Yeah, so it dissolves this kind of border between consciousness and the world. And it's the case that Husserl believed that consciousness itself is a directedness towards the outside. So to try to ask how does consciousness get from the inside to the outside is a bad question because consciousness is the awareness of the outside. Consciousness is itself a relational kind of thing. There is no inside, properly speaking, consciousness is always directed to something. Consciousness is always going to something. So it's the case that there is no bridge problem. It's not the case that we need to solve how do we get to the outside of our consciousness. Rather, we are always already outside. So we're not trying to understand this relationship between inside and outside. What phenomenology is trying to do is instead to say, how is or how can we understand consciousness as already outside? So there is no bridge problem. It's instead the question is how should we understand this relationship between consciousness and the world rather than trying to figure out how consciousness gets outside of itself into the world. So it's not looking for a mind world solution, but rather trying to understand how experience, how consciousness, oh yeah, how we experience and how the object is. So how do we experience objects? Because this is what consciousness is. It is directedness to the outside, and the goal of phenomenology is to clarify what this relationship is of consciousness already being outside. So it's dissolving the problem of the bridge and just trying to understand what it means that we are always outside, that as conscious beings, we are always with objects, we are always directed to objects. So this is one of the fundamental tenets of phenomenology, is that we're trying to understand intentionality. And for Husserl, intentionality in contrast to its normal understanding of it, is just this relationship between consciousness and the world. So again, intentionality is just this relationship between consciousness and the world. Okay. The second point is that phenomenology is executed in Husserl's sense from a first person perspective. So, what this means is that I am the one who is doing phenomenology. I am the one who is looking at my own experience. So, I'll contrast this to empirical research. So, uh, in qualitative research, people are interviewing other people and they're trying, so I'm interviewing someone else and I am trying to understand their experience. This is the case in qualitative research. In phenomenology, instead, I look at my own experience and I analyze my own experience so that I can understand what my relationship with the world is itself. So I describe and analyze my awareness of the world. I'm not looking at someone else's experience. I'm not looking at your experience. I'm only trying to examine my consciousness of the world. This is very important. So, yeah, it's opposed to third person analysis. So, as I stated, it's opposed to trying to understand how you experience the world. I'm just looking at my own experience of the world. Um, and in this way, I think a defining tenet of, so I'll explain a little bit. Um, it's the case that Husserl believed that we have a moral, an ethical obligation to look for ourselves because we inherit, we absorb, we take over a lot of beliefs about experience, about consciousness from tradition, from history, and from common sense interpretations, folk psychology interpretations. Husserl believes that we need to ourselves, for the first time, look at exactly what's going on with consciousness in the world. We have an ethical responsibility to not just accept what others have told us, but ourselves look at what is the case, how this relationship between consciousness and the world actually appears and how it actually is. So in this sense, it's also, I would say, most of continental philosophy, in contrast to analytic philosophy, is skeptical of common sense. So in a lot of analytic philosophy, you might get appeals or arguments using common sense. Um, Phenomenology and a lot of continental philosophy, in contrast, is opposed to this. Most phenomenologists believe that common sense distorts the world, the way that things are, rather than helps. So again, analytic philosophy many times will think common sense or the way everyone conceives of this. Oh, is everything okay? Is good. But in contrast, phenomenologists would reject this. We're okay? Oh, okay, good. Um, so the third point is that phenomenology is concerned with structures. So let's say I just examined my own experience of the world. If this was everything that phenomenology was, there would be nothing philosophical about it. So I'm looking at my experience. I see the computer, I see my coffee cup, I see my phone, I see the light. If I were just to write about this philosophy, like, and just talk about this would not be interesting. This would be a diary or something like a stream of consciousness narrative. Nothing philosophical about this, just me talking about what's going on in my consciousness at that very moment. So even though phenomenology is executed from a first person perspective and it's a study of my experience, it's not just looking at how consciousness is occurring now and then what's going on next and then what's going on next. It's not a diary. Instead, phenomenology is looking for unchanging structures, yeah, structures of our consciousness of objects and the objects of consciousness. So it's trying to understand what it means to be perceiving at all. So yeah, an example of one kind of intention, one kind of way of being conscious is perception. So it's trying to understand the structures of perception. It's not just trying to say, this is my perception of the cup, this is my perception of the light, but rather, what does it mean to be perceiving at all? Uh, Another example is imagining. What does it mean to imagine at all? Not what this imagination is and then that imagination, but what is imagination? And in the same way, it's trying to understand what the objects of these experiences are. So when we look at perception, let's say, we're trying as phenomenologists to describe what perception is and what the object of perception is. So, what is a perceptual object as such? Because as I discussed at the start of the talk, these two are always related to each other because consciousness is the relationship between my perception and the object of perception. So they cannot be understood separately. They must always be analyzed together. So we, as phenomenologists, are trying to, when we analyze perception, we're trying to understand the structures of the perceptual intention, the perceptual experience, and the perceptual object together. And we try to explain these or describe these together. So I want to give one example. So what does it mean to see a perceptual object? Oh, can you hear me? Is everything good? Okay.
Yes, it's good.
Okay, very good. So this sounds very simple, but it is a really brilliant insight on Husserl's part. Perceptual objects, this is the insight. So what is the structure of a perceptual object? It's that it's given from perspectives. We only see part of the object at one time. So it's the case that on the one hand, I see the top of the table in full perceptual presence. It's given to me, I see it, it's very clear that it's there. But at the same time, the bottom side of the table is not given to me in full perceptual presence. So the top side of the table is present, and the bottom side of the table is absent. And one of Husserl's insights is that even though the bottom side of the table is absent, we still see a full three-dimensional object. So we are not just aware of the top side of the table, we are also aware of the bottom side of the table at the same time. I know this sounds very straightforward, but the fact that a perceptual object is both present and absent at the same time, yet we see one whole three-dimensional table despite this absence. And what this means is that in perception, absence is always a part of presence. That in addition to what is present, we are also perceiving more than what is given. And this shows that consciousness is always involved in the meaning-making process of perception. Objects don't just come, when we see objects, they don't just come pre-packaged with their meaning. Rather, we are always involved in making the meaning of the object. We are always involved in meaning more, in seeing more than what is just given in full presence. And this means, yeah, that absence is constitutive of presence, that all perceptions involve absence and presence, and that this is a necessary structure of uh, consciousness, of conscious perception. And I think this is a really nice thing about phenomenology, is that it's taking something like a childlike wonder towards the world. So uh, only a child would say something like, "Oh, things are given from sides. Things are given from parts. We only see part of the object." This is something that a child might say because they are, for the first time, seeing what objects are, how objects are given in the world. So the idea is to maintain a kind of childlike wonder at the world while using very technical philosophical tools to understand these very initially simple ideas. Because what happens is that these simple ideas become forgotten. These simple ideas about how the world is presented to us, how we see the world, are lost over time and don't appear to be interesting philosophical questions. But the question of the most basic ways that the world is given to us are the most important questions. And we wrongly assume that we understand this. When we first look again and turn back to this initial experience of the world, what we find is that consciousness is much more interesting, much more even magical, let's say, than or mystical than we previously thought. Consciousness is amazing and wonderful, and the results of phenomenology itself will make you become more have more wonder about what the world is, and be amazed at how the world gives itself. So by looking at these very simple insights, we can see through using like technical philosophical methods what it means to be, what it means to be a conscious being in the world. And you might think that you know, but in fact, once you start actually unpacking what consciousness is, it becomes so much more technical than you can think. Hence why Husserl and Heidegger are often cited as some of the most difficult authors to understand because they're taking these already assumed ideas and unpacking them to show what it actually looks like. So it's even though it's straightforward, it's not simple. That's for sure. So yeah, more is meant than more is given. And then the final point is that phenomenology is a communal project. So this might seem to go against the idea of a first person perspective. So when I am looking at my conscious experiences, I am examining, so let's take perception. I am examining what it means to perceive. And I analyze this, I look at the structures of perception, and then I come up with a theory of what perception is. But I am not a perfect philosopher, as much as I would like to be a perfect philosopher. I am not. So what I have to do is I have to talk to others um, about about what the structure of perception is. I have to talk to others about how they experience perception, and they might have, or their analyses might be uh, better in some ways, or they might address different elements of perception that I might have forgotten about, or I didn't recognize yet. Or let's say I put forward a theory of perception, and then a friend of mine says, actually, I don't think that's right. And here's why. Here's how I perceive experience, or how I have perceptual experiences. And then I can reconsider my own opinion. And then I say, oh my gosh, you're right. I was wrong about this. Because it's the case that uh, I'm not perfect. Yeah, I can always be wrong, and other people can help me come to a better perspective. And the idea of phenomenology is that we work together. We try to understand experiences by helping each other. It's kind of a system of checks and balances that we're always trying to help each other come to better understanding of the experience. And it's not argumentative. Rather, it's the idea that we're trying to help each other. So phenomenologists don't offer arguments. What we offer are new descriptions. So I describe the structures of perception as I see them. Someone else describes the structures of perception as they think that they are. And then together as a community, we decide, okay, maybe this one is better and this one is worse. And we come together to make a better depiction or a better theory of perception. So it's always a communal project, and in contrast to analytic philosophy and other fields, it is not an argument-based field. It is a communal project, one where we work together, one where we help each other, and one where things come together as part of a community. Oh, and I would like to invite you to become part of this community, to work together, to analyze your experiences, and share in this communal project that we have developed to try and to come to better understanding of how experience occurs. So I have several examples of this, but I don't know. I can talk for more time, or we can stop now. It's up to you.
I think we can just continue.
Okay, how much longer? Because I just made examples so that I can, in case I have extra time.
I'm not sure how many of you have like burning questions to ask, but I also have several questions. Perhaps we can finish at about uh 10 minutes later so that
Okay,
we can.
okay, that sounds good. I'll go 5 minutes so that you have, in case you have more questions.
Perfect.
So I want to give an example of a structure of perception. So these are just some very basic ideas, just to give you some kind of idea of what the very simple results of phenomenology show. So when yeah, let me put it this way. The world is always given as a world that is with others. To see any object is to see an object that others also are able to see. So when I look at a table, I don't just see this table as a table that I see, but rather I also see it as something that others can see. So built in to the very structure of perception is community, is what we call intersubjectivity. That to see anything in the world, to see a world, is to see a with world. There is no isolated perception. Perception is always a perception of an intersubjective object, an object that is given to others. Again, this might seem simple, but so much of the history of philosophy has forgotten this idea. So much has ignored this. And this has caused very many problems in the history of philosophy. And to come back and to recognize this simple idea has solved and changed many problems. Another example is that perceptual experience always occurs from within a body. Again, very simple that I see from within my body, but yet this point has been forgotten. So, what is the case is that perceptual objects are always given with possibilities, possibilities for disclosures of present parts and absent parts, and that these present parts and absent parts of the table or any perceptual object is given with regards to how the body can move around it. So when I move over here to the top side of the table, I have the present part, which is the top side of the table, and the absent part, which is the bottom side of the table. But then let's say I move to the bottom side, I can see then the bottom side of the table. So that which was previously absent has become present, and that which was previously present, the top side of the table, has become absent. So by walking around a table, I am confronted with consistently shifting presences and absences, where these presences and absences kind of work together to give me a full picture of the whole table. The implications of this are much more complicated than I can go into here, but again, an insight that is been forgotten by much of the philosophical tradition, that there is no relationship to a perceptual object that is not involving the body. To try to describe perception, one must also account for how the body moves, how the body is related to objects of perception. And this is what has led to like the in like the 90s and early 2000s a boom in what's called embodied consciousness. So this idea that consciousness is always embodied, even though it may sound very simple, a lot of thinkers published on this, even though they already recognized, even though it seems simple, so much philosophy in many years has been published on this, which is just essentially a repetition of what Husserl has said. So while a lot of people think that they're doing something new, they've just been working out what Husserl actually said. And then finally, just for the last example is the structure of perception with regards to emotion. So again, a very common perspective in the history of philosophy is that we have perceptual experience, which is one component of experience, and then built on top of that is a feeling as a kind of separate part of consciousness. That I see the object, and then additionally, I have a kind of feeling towards it. Maybe let's say this table was very important to me, so I would have the perception of it, and then I would feel some kind of joy, let's say whatever, joy in seeing the table. Um, the key difference in phenomenology is that feelings and perceptions are always coming together, that it's one experience together. There is no fundamentally separation between a feeling and a perception, but rather that every experience is always both a cognitive component, a kind of like very direct or straightforward component, and a feeling component. So there is no perception that doesn't involve feeling. So while a lot of analytic philosophers will try to just look at consciousness as this cognitive processing machine, phenomenology recognizes that consciousness is always a feeling machine, and that to understand any experience, there needs to also be a recognition of this feeling element, that one cannot separate consciousness from its feeling. So yeah, again, we want a lot of analytics want to think of consciousness as this very abstract and just thought-based processing machine, whereas phenomenologists recognize that all of consciousness is involving both perception and feeling, that we are not just thinking or seeing beings, but we are always feeling beings. And to understand any experience, one must also take account of the feeling of the experience. So just to summarize, there are 4 points. Yeah, that that consciousness is intentional. That is that there is no fundamental separation between our consciousness and the world, but that consciousness is always already directed to the world. That consciousness is this kind of directedness towards objects, that I have an ethical responsibility to study experience from my first person view, that I have to look at my own experience. Phenomenology is concerned with structures, so it's trying to understand what it means to perceive. What do we need to account for when we look at perception as a perception? What is the structures of that perception? And then it is a communal project. So it is about working together to try to understand what experience is. I am not some kind of isolated being. I am always together with others, and I always need to work together with others to understand how consciousness is this directedness towards the world. And as I mentioned, this is a really kind of amazing project where childlike wonder reveals new insights and amazing and wonderful insights about who we are, what we are, and how we are in the world together. I invite you to become part of this project and to see how just complex and interesting our relationship to the world is, and how we are so uh, enmeshed or part of the world and part of each other, and that it is just a really amazing to see who we are. Um, so I hope that you will join me. And in fact, by asking questions, you will already be joining me in this process. So thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you so much for the talk, Professor. We'll now open the floor for questions. For those of you here, please just raise your hand. And for the audience online, you can drop your questions in the chat and we'll try to read it out.
Oh,
So, hello, Professor. Thank you for your sharing. And you just mentioned several characteristics of phenomenology, but for me, I think it's still quite abstract, I can say so. So, could you tell us any specific question that phenomenology is discussing about, or several example about how phenomenology of influence neurosciences or arts?
yes. Um, so oh, I'll give uh, an example of yeah, okay. I have a common example that I use. So I was at a conference in Scotland, and I was, for reasons I will not discuss, feeling very guilty about something. And then there was a presentation about guilt being done by an empirical researcher. And the empirical researcher was attempting to study guilt. And so what he did was he asked people, he gave them a story. He said, your best friend has a bicycle, and this bicycle was given to him by his mother, who recently died. Let's say you borrow this bicycle and you take it to the store to buy uh, cigarettes. This is my example. And you leave the bike outside and the bike gets stolen. And then he asks, how guilty would you feel if A, the bike was never found again, B, you found the bike, or C, someone else found the bike? And he asked them to describe how guilty they were. Um, I was furious at this study. I was very angry at this study because this person was not studying guilt. As I saw at the time, and as many philosophers see at the time, guilt is not a rational kind of thing. When you are truly guilty, the world is spinning. There's kind of a black cloud around you. You feel nauseous. Your body feels kind of gross, and you act irrationally and strangely. So to study guilt, one cannot like tell people a story and then ask them to describe guiltiness. To like even under like to begin to start to do a study, one must understand what the experience of guilt is. Only once one understands what the experience of guilt is, could they then conduct an empirical study about it. So the idea is that a lot of empirical science needs phenomenology to be able to study experience. That without having some kind of fundamental understanding of experience, like you can really mess up empirical studies, as this person did. They had no idea what guilt the experience was like, yet they conducted an experience of guilt and totally messed it up. They had no idea what guilt was and how it can be understood. A very another brief example, because I'm talking a lot, is the experience of colors. So for a very long time in the history of philosophy, colors were understood as some kind of secondary class, as secondary properties. And in contrast to like size or shape or things that can be measured. Phenomenology says no, colors, even though they can change the way they are given, are still fundamental parts of objects. So even though you can walk around a table and the table can change colors based upon the lighting, it is still part of the object as such. And moreover, to be colored, to have color, is to be something that constantly changes. So it's the case that the way objects are given to us is constantly shifting, is constantly being differently perceived. And this is not a defect. This is not something secondary. This is how objects are given. This is what it means to be connected to a world. It means to be connected to a world that is always changing, that is always being given differently. Uh, and yeah, to be an object, to be colored, is to be constantly given in different ways. This doesn't make it bad or deficient, but rather is just how things are. I don't think that last example was as clear, but I think the first example was.
Well, thank you, but I think I take a glance into phenomenology, uh, but not quite clear. But thank you anyway.
Okay.
Perhaps we can see, is there any student that had question, and I can give the microphone to them.
May I have some? Oh, oh, we still have like quite a few audience. All right. Um,
Okay, thank you, Professor. What I want to ask is that if phenomenology focuses on one's own consciousness and experience, then how can I ensure that the conclusions of phenomenology are universal or general? Or the is it the case that these two qualities are not important for phenomenological scholars?
So there is like a phenomenology of truth as well. So what does it mean for something to be true? And I think a lot of problems in everything in the world and all studies is that somehow we believe we can get to some kind of objective truth, that we can extricate or remove the subject. And phenomenology rejects this. There is no such thing as purely objective truth. There is no such thing as something that is true beyond human consciousness of it. Um, that truth is always truth as disclosed to people. And this means we can always be wrong. It's always possible with regards to everything that we can be wrong. So, in a most extreme case, uh, I could be in a French mental asylum right now in a straitjacket, and I'm just hallucinating everything that's going on. This is always possible. And to discount that is to not understand what it means to be conscious, to what it means for something to be true. That it's always possible that together as a community, we can always be wrong, and that we always need to be checking each other. We always need to be helping each other, and that the idea of objective truth as separate from consciousness is an oxymoron or just a false, I hope, a false ideal, which is so frustrating because it has resulted in so much philosophy going down this path of trying to figure out what can be objectively true. And again, I tell a brief story. I was talking, I was giving a lecture, actually in Guangzhou, and I was telling them about the concept of truth, and about how the idea that there can be some kind of objective truth is a lie told to you by other philosophers and society. And then one of the students raised their hand and said, "Why are you trying to ruin our lives?" And I was very happy about this. I was very happy about this, that he asked me this question. And this is a question that I wish other people would ask me. Because, yeah, it's supposed to unsettle you, it's supposed to let you see what experience truly is. And phenomenology, I think, has definitively proven, or most for me, it's definitively proven that everything, for something to be true, it must be true for a subject, and that the only way to arrive at better truths are to do so through intersubjectivity. So I would not just say we push aside the question of objectivity, but we reject the question of objectivity, pure objectivity.
Okay, so can I say that the most parts of phenomenology is served as more like a tool or a method?
Yes, so phenomenology is a method. I should put it
Uh,
that way.
uh,
Phenomenology is not a set of doctrines or a set of conclusions. Phenomenology is a method.
okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your sharing, Professor. I want to ask, you just mentioned about intersubjectivity. Personally, I think this is a concept that emphasizes interaction, but as subjects, when others talk about their experiences, even if they use the same words, how do we know we are talking about the same thing, or why is it possible for us to understand others through communication?
Oh, this is a very good question as well. Um, it's the case that it at least seems that we all uh, experience the same world, that we're all together in the same world, and I experience objects as things that others can see. And it's so I'll give an when another person gives you their description of, for example, perception, you don't just accept it. You must test it with regards to your own experience. So when someone says to you, I think that a table is given from perspectives, or that things are given from sides, you don't assume that they are right. You have to check it against your own experience. So if someone, let's say if it was possible that someone lived in a totally different, crazy different world, when they described something and told you about it, you would say, wow, that's nothing like my experience. I think that's wrong. Um, and you are always the final arbiter, the final judge of whether something corresponds to your experience or not. So while it's also a communal project, you must always be responsible for the truths that you understand, for what you write. Or yeah, so the primary way we do this is through publishing books and publishing articles or speaking at conferences or speaking at this kind of thing. So I would say, I think in a certain sense, naturally, do not accept those conclusions that I've presented wholesale, or don't just accept them. Check them for yourself, and then talk about them with others. Perhaps you go have a beer or a tea after this, and then you can ask others if they agree with what you said. But ultimately, you have the final ethical responsibility to check everything against your own experience. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it did indirectly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a very good question.
Great. Do you have a question? All right. Um, all right.
Okay, so thank you, Professor. Well, I have two questions actually.
Okay.
So
If you could ask one at a time, because if you, because I'll get lost and forget the first question otherwise.
yeah. So first, I want to ask about the example you just showed about the embodied perception. Well, you see that you say that we are seeing something or perception something through our body. Well, can you give some insights about how it can reshape our uh, thoughts about perception the outer world?
That's a very good question as well. Um, so objects, so a perceptual object is always given as something related to a body, in that uh, it's always given as having certain possibilities related to my movements. So when I look like a structure of perception, or a perceptual object, let's say, is such that it's given as an within I can. Let me just type it so it's clear. Yeah, like this, or an if then, where I see a table as something I can go and look at the bottom side of, as something I can move my body, or if I move my body underneath the table, then I can see the bottom side of the table. So a perceptual object is always given with practical possibilities related to the body. Um, yeah, so that's one element. And then another element is that uh, objects are given as three-dimensional objects because we are embodied. That I can walk around the table and see. I can, if I walk around the table, then I can see other elements of the table, and it's because I can walk around things and move around things that I can, and then I can, that it's given as a three-dimensional object. If I were, let's say, just in a fixed position, then I would just see flat surfaces without three-dimensionality. It's because we are embodied that things are given as three dimensions. And I'll give a helpful example. So let's say there was some kind of God. And a lot of people think that God could see things from every angle, and see all of the parts of the table. No, perceptual objects are, as such, always given from perspectives. A perceptual object is always given from sides. There is no ability by anyone ever to see a perceptual object from every part. So like to see the inside of the table is a part, or see all of the inside parts of the table, for example, cannot all be seen at the same time. And all of the different sides cannot be seen at the same time without giving that thing from perspectives. So a lot of people think that a perceptual object is just something there that is like can be seen from all sides and has a fixed position. No, a perceptual object as such is given from sides. And this means the world is given from sides. To be an object in the world is to be something that is given perceptually from sides. So I think that's a radical reconception of what objects are. Does that make sense? I don't know. I hope. No?
Thank you very much. I think I understand some of it well.
Okay.
Okay,
Now, your
so
second question.
yeah, I have another question about the intersubjectivity you just
Yes.
mentioned. Well, you say that we should always verify the descriptions at last by ourselves. But
Yeah.
well, I'm just wondering about how the phenomenology look about the science, because we know that that we always the truth, sorry, the knowledge of science is always constructed on some experiments that done, for example, in laboratory, well, which cannot be done by ourselves. So how can ordinary people, see the knowledge of science?
That's a very good question as well. Um, so I guess I would say two things. There is like built in, so, okay, first, phenomenological truths should be checked by you. So descriptions about the structures of experience should be checked by you. But let's say someone discovers a new particle somewhere. So on the one hand, this is also intersubjectively checked by the scientific community. So there's a really big experiment that finds a really interesting result. Scientists don't just accept this and take this over. They conduct more experiments. Other labs will conduct other experiments to check this, to see if the results are repeatable, replicable. So there is already a kind of intersubjectivity built into science. Um, and then I would say, second, we when we experience other people, we also experience them as people who are trying to tell us something true. So unless we are given good reasons to doubt that person, so let's say that person lies to me many times, when I experience a person talking to me, I experience them as someone who is trying to truthfully communicate to me. So when I'm telling you about phenomenology, you do not like you don't think I'm lying. You don't think I'm trying to lie to you. There is an immediate kind of belief that I'm trying to tell you the truth. And this is kind of something necessary to rely on when we're doing science, is because, of course, we cannot check everything, we cannot do everything, but because these things are intersubjectively verified and other people look at them in the sciences, we can assume that they're true, but with the recognition that science also can always be wrong. That in the future, another experiment can come along and someone can disprove the claims of a previous science. us previous scientists. And in fact, this happens all the time. It's always possible that science can be wrong. So we always accept them with a kind of tentative basis that recognizes that they are trying their best. We assume sincerity. We assume they're being truthful. And with a recognition that this is not always going to be entirely right. That's not the best answer I have, but this is a really good question and one that actually a lot of people have worked on. And it's not my specialty, so I wish I had a better answer for you.
Thank you so much. I just noticed we're running out of time, but there's perhaps another question in the audience. Could you take one more, or shall we call
Yeah,
it
of
a day?
course, yeah.
I'll pass the microphone.
Hello. Thank you very much for your lecture, Professor. I'm not actually in the humanities field, and this is also my first introduction to phenomenology. So I do apologize if my question is a bit general. But in Husserl's phenomenology, is there a distinction made between the consciousness and the body, which is used to navigate the physical world?
So, yes, there is, but as phenomenology developed, there was more of a recognition that we as conscious beings are our bodies, that we exist as bodies. So Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous French phenomenologist, existentialist, always says we exist the body, which is an incorrect grammatical formulation. Intentionally, we exist the body. That to exist is to exist as a body. And that to be is to be something that is moving in the world, that can move, that always looks around and sees things, that there is no such thing as a disembodied consciousness. And I think that this is also a really important problem in the history of, or a really unfortunate problem in the history of philosophy, trying to understand how the mind inhabits a body, how there is a ghost in the machine, whereas phenomenology would reject the distinction between mind and body, while Husserl might not. He's wrong. According to me, I think that we exist as a body, that we move in the world as a body, that we are a body, we exist the body. So to try to separate them so what we do is we separate them and then we try to understand how they get back together, which is very silly. We say, oh, it's a different thing, but now how do we make it the same thing again? Whereas we should just accept it's one from the start, that I be my body. Again, that's incorrect English grammar, but intentionally so. Rather than saying I am my body, I be my body. I exist as a body.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very clear answer. I understood. Yeah.
That was a very good question, too. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I see we're really running out of time, and perhaps we'll just wrap up.
Okay. And if you
so-
have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. It should be easy to find me online, I hope. But I can also, Yixing can also provide my email if you're interested. And I'm also always willing to chat. I mean, that's my passion is Husserl. So anytime anyone is interested, I'm always excited to talk about it.
All right, then I'll forward your email to our members.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for coming. And thank you so much, Professor, for like accepting this invitation and giving
Oh,
us
no, my
this.
pleasure. My pleasure. I'm so excited to talk about it.
Great. Then I think we'll call it an end.
Okay.
So, bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great evening.